Hey everybody, welcome back to the podcast. Today, my guest is Taylor James. He's the host, producer, and creator of the Waffle Shop Podcast. Taylor and I discuss a wide array of topics, including reality TV, ice baths, balancing ego and authenticity in creative work while avoiding the pitfalls of audience capture. We also delve into the perils of navigating unsolicited advice, public perception, and the importance of self-validation. Additionally, we explore perspectives on death and living fully. Disclaimer: partway through our conversation, I talk about riding out panic attacks. So if you are the sort of person who suffers with panic, please don't listen to this while you are driving. I know firsthand just how dangerous it can be when you are behind the wheel. This was an extremely enjoyable conversation for me. Taylor is such a warm character, and I was able to see firsthand just why his podcast is doing so well. So I hope you enjoy my conversation with Taylor James.
I went through this phase of saying yes to everything. Like I don't want to say I lived a sheltered life, I didn't. But a huge period of my life, I kind of like shied away from everything. Didn't really put myself out there. But when it came to like the podcast, it ripped me out of my comfort zone. So then when the podcast started to do what it was doing, I used to get like a few DMs from like TV shows and this, that, and the other. I was just saying yes to everything. And then this one that I went on, it was a dating show. And one of the things, because I use like Lego for my anxiety, like it's the only thing that kind of really takes me out of like my head. Like I'm only focused on what's in front of me. And they exploited it. They ran with that. They made me dress up as a Lego man. And then they put me in front of someone and was like, oh, would you have a threesome? And I'm stood there as a Lego man like, no, I don't know. Maybe, but not like this.
Wow.
So yeah, it's actually a really dramatic story now I'm saying it out loud.
Yeah.
It was funny at the time, but now I'm like, okay, they actually exploited my anxiety.
Yeah.
That was quite deep.
Which show was it?
Funny though. I'll find it. It was like a YouTube web-based thing for Channel 4. First Impressions. It was called Dating First Impressions.
Right.
So basically I wasn't able to see the girl who I was technically on a date with, and we just got to ask questions. And then they made me dress up as Lego man, and then she was a child's entertainer. So when I took the Lego mask off, she was dressed as Alice.
Right. Interesting.
Yeah, that was the first and last time we saw each other.
Are you still saying yes to everything?
No, I'm very more reserved now, a bit more professional now. But it's fun though. Like I feel like everyone has to do something like wild at some point, and I feel like I didn't do a lot of like what people do in their 20s.
Right.
So I feel like I'm like catching up. I've lived life backwards compared to a lot of people. So yeah.
How old are you?
I'm 34 now.
34. Nice. Yeah.
So
I'm 35, so it's pretty similar.
Struggle, isn't it?
Do you know, mate? And happy birthday, by the way. Yeah, for the other week. Do you know, mate? I've never felt better than I do like in my mid-30s. Yeah, I've sort of like
we all fear it for some bizarre reason. Like we all think like, oh god, we're turning 30, like it's going to be like the end of the world. I don't think I've met someone who hasn't turned 30 who hasn't said like it's been the start of like something special, or they found like confident, they know who they are. I think it was a huge turning point for a lot of people. I think especially men, because I think we go through this weird transition phase of like trying to find our purpose or figuring out who we are. Yet turning 30 seemed to solve that for a lot of people.
I don't know if you'd seen from my profile or whatever, but we have that in common as well, the whole weird TV show thing.
No.
Yeah, I was on Naked Attraction.
I mean, like I found like a whole new respect.
Oh, right.
What made you do that? What made you like?
Well, I think similar to what you were just saying, you know, like, I mean, don't get me wrong, I've done my fair share of wild shit throughout my 20s and whatnot, and this was in my 30s. But, do you know, I'd been through a really difficult few years. You know, I started a business, it failed quite badly. My relationship fell apart. I lost not only my fiance but also a stepdaughter. And it was
Wow.
it was
Okay.
heavy. And you know, it was what's the word? When both people decide it's not right, what's that word?
Amicable.
Yeah, it was amicable, but still, it doesn't mean it's any less difficult.
Yeah.
And if you've ever been in a situation where you've you know, taken on someone who's not your biological child, it's such a huge undertaking if you've not been a parent before, and then you're just given like these two forms of grief to go through. So it was like double. Anyways, I didn't intend to sort of go on a monologue and get all emotional there, but like, so I'd gone through this difficult period, and I was watching that Hunted program. Have you seen that?
Yeah. Addicted to it.
Yeah, and I was like, oh god, this looks so much fun. And it was like, taking applicants now, and I'm like, fuck yeah, let's go. So I'm following the link. And then, of course, it didn't occur to me that I was watching it on demand and it was like 2 years ago. So obviously, they weren't taking applicants.
By that point.
Yeah. You're like, fucking hell. This was 2 years later. Anyways, so they were like, oh, have a look at some of our other programs. One of which was Naked Attraction. And my initial response was, ugh. And that's the last thing I want to do. So, and then like my personality type is like, ooh, maybe that's the thing I should do.
Thing they should do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whether that was wise or not. But, so I applied to go on it, and yeah, it was crazy. It was so much fun. I think it did boost my confidence.
Oh wow.
Yeah, so it's I'll send you the link if you want.
I mean, I think at this stage it's like
yeah.
I feel like I'd be more embarrassed about the Lego situation than standing there with
Do you?
everything else. I think so. But I don't know. I actually really respect people who go on it because it's the freedom, isn't it? That is that kind of like, well, why it's the same, I guess, with the whole mental health thing. It's just like, well, why everyone has genitals.
Yeah.
So why do we find it so difficult to talk about?
Yeah, 100%. I mean,
I wasn't expecting this conversation to go this way.
it was like, it was so strange. Like, and sorry, I do this. I waffle on about myself. By the way, great name for the podcast.
Thank you.
I got to be careful not to keep using it now. Waffle. But like,
it's great for the brand. It's
it
fun.
was strangely freeing, like without being like totally cliche. But like, I don't know, it just felt like a game. And like,
did you do the picking, or
I was in the
were
pod.
you being picked?
I was in the
Okay.
pod. And I remember just like on the build up to before going on it, I was having a little bit of a wobble, and my sort of mantra was, I kept on telling myself, this is just a game. We're only here once. Like, just who gives a shit? That wasn't it, the last one, but I can't remember. But it was just like, life is a game. Just have fun.
Yeah.
That's it. And
do you know what though? There's something actually. I know we're talking about like Naked Attraction and like TV shows and stuff like that, but there is actually a lot of lesson there and a lot of advice that can actually be taken from that. Of with whatever like aspect you look at this of like getting out your comfort zone, having a laugh, because like you said, it's that thing sometimes that we put off for years, months, or however long, thinking we can't do that or I shouldn't do that. And it turns out to be the exact thing that you need to do. Like the fact that you did that, it was like, oh, okay, I don't know if this is for me. But then, like you've just said, like you come away feeling like so much more confident and free. And it's with almost like not necessarily a new lease of life, but almost like a new little outlook of like, well, okay, well, if I can do that, I can kind of do anything.
Yeah.
So it's, I think there's a lot to be said about that.
And you've got to, like, there's different periods in your life, you know, where you should say to no to things and yes to things, and you have to be able to figure that out. Because I was approached for a second show, which was like it was like a Love Island type thing, but like a naked Love Island. And
God, we're all going on.
Yeah.
Fair play.
And then I was like, I'd started like the process of doing interviews, and I'm like, yeah, you know, YOLO, you only live once and all that. But then on the other side of things, there was something inside me saying no. Like all my friends and family were going, yeah, you know, because that's what society does. Yeah, I'll get yourself on the telly. But I'm like,
all your friends and family are perverts.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. But yeah, it's also like being able to listen to that inner voice and go, when's that inner voice coming from a place of fear, or when is that inner voice like your actual true self saying, nah, you're done with the programs now, like you've done that.
Yeah.
Like, and that's like, so I chose not to continue with it, and like, right, I don't know, I just want to focus on the podcast now.
I think it's your gut, isn't it? Like you've literally just kind of like answered there, like it's your gut feeling. I was talking about this recently about the whole kind of concept of like closing chapters, like on your life. Like you can use it like from an age point of view, or, you know, relationship, jobs, anything like that. Like we get so in our head that we can't move on, or we can't close that chapter because we might think we're a failure, or, you know, people are going to judge us in a certain way. Like people are going to judge you regardless of what you do. But what's important is how you feel about those decisions. So it's actually quite admirable that you almost ignored the noise and listened to yourself in that situation, which I don't think a lot of people do. A lot of people go through life basing their decisions on what other people might think. I mean, the fact that we're sat here now, like with these platforms that we've built, like at one point we were like, I can't do that. Like I'm not a celebrity. I don't have like a following. And it's like, well, the skills that we've learned from this, like I'm genuinely so proud of that past version of me that made this decision, because I dread to think who I would have turned into or what would have happened to me if I didn't make those decisions. But it was my gut telling me this is what you should be doing. And I'm a big believer in, like, I mean, I'm not like overly spiritual or religious, but I believe like the universe or whatever it is will constantly remind you of something until you take the hint, or you learn the lesson from it. And all those years in my 20s of being in friendship groups, jobs, relationships that I didn't want to be in had led me to that point of like, well, actually, no, like now it's time to do what you want to do. And I haven't looked back since.
That's awesome.
So there's a lot to be said from just that whole getting naked on TV thing. A lot of lessons there.
Yeah, a lot of wisdom in getting your chopper out on Channel 4.
Exactly. I had no idea. I did not know what to expect. This is cool.
So when did you make that decision to start a podcast?
Do you know what? I really need to kind of work on this, because I really want like some kind of like wanky answer in terms of, you know, I had this real defining moment of like, do you know what, I'm going to start a podcast. But I don't know. I don't know why I did it. I've always loved music, always listened to the radio, always got my headphones in. And I was going through a lot at the time, like to a point when it was completely consuming me, and to a point it was destroying like everything. And I just had this idea one day of like, you know what, I need to talk about this. Like, I need to do something because I don't know what else I'm going to do at this point. We were smack bang at the start of the pandemic. My mum's in a neurological care home. I can't go and visit her. So all of a sudden, all this kind of world that almost was like fighting my hardest to kind of control, I had no control over. But what I did have control over was what I was doing. So it almost made me lock it in on myself. Whereas I was like, well, when I was in like sixth form or like growing up, like I always wanted to work in media, but I never give myself a chance. So I think it was probably like a combination of things, but I still to this day don't know why I sat down and I recorded that first episode. But it's going back to what we said earlier, like it almost makes me a little bit emotional because I'm just like, I'm so grateful of that version of me that was just like, now's the time. And my mum tells me off all the time for it because I base quite a lot of the success of it or what's happening now, like on what happened to her. And like, I'm not grateful of what happened, but I'm grateful of what the lesson I took from it and the fire that it created for me. But yeah, she tells me off quite a lot now because she's just like, you've done the hard work. Like this is all on you. Like I'm part of the journey, but like what is happening now is all down to you and like your hard work. Which I think a lot of people discredit themselves for, or we kind of like to big someone else up. Whereas it's like, no, it's okay to give yourself a pat on the back sometimes of like, do you know what, you did that. Like, so yeah, so it's a weird transitional phase at the moment that I'm going through in terms of accepting that and self-validating and almost letting go of like a past life to move forward with the one that I think I was always supposed to be living. So yeah, you've probably caught me like at a really
The best time.
weird moment.
Best time.
Yeah, the best time.
Fuck yeah.
So yeah, that was a lot of information. It was a big
That's
answer.
what you're here for.
But yeah, I don't know, but
Well, you listen to your gut.
So bloody grateful.
That's why, isn't it?
Yeah.
So, and that's all that matters. And yeah, whether you believe in like the universe and stuff like that, there's certainly something to be said for that inner voice, that intuition. I once heard it on a podcast, and surprise, and it was like, what's the tiny voice saying? And like, you know, like there's the inner voice, but no, the tiny, like the small, like this can hardly be heard saying start a podcast or something. Like,
yeah,
that's your intuition. And once I heard that, I was like, oh, like that's fucking good, because it kind of like it makes it actionable. Like, oh, that's the inner voice. Like that's the gut feeling. It's that little thing that just like flits into your mind, and you think, oh.
But it's the one that we most ignore as
like,
well.
Oh, that relationship with so and so. What? Like, that's the stuff, or the stuff that's coming up in your dreams. Is usually.
Do you believe in manifestation?
Not in a like The Secret type way.
Yeah.
I used to So I went through during that difficult period, and I think this is what happens when you're in a difficult period. You tend to clutch at things, and if you feel like you do not have control, and you're like looking for like shit, that's when people turn to religion, or they turn to like manifestation and stuff like that. And I'm going to manifest this amazing life and stuff. And I have absolutely nothing against people doing that. And you've got to believe what you can believe, whatever gets you there. But I think I've transitioned. By the way, I feel like the word transition has totally been fucked now. Like you can't say transition without like feeling like you're talking about some like talking about
Yeah,
transitioning.
that's true.
Not that I've got
Yeah.
anything against that, but I ain't transitioning that
No,
way.
but it's true. Like that's immediately when someone says that word, that's where my head goes
Yeah,
now as well.
yeah. We need a new word for it. But but yeah. So then I've sort of transitioned into like a more agentic sort of like I'm in charge, and I'm doing this shit because I've worked hard, and it's got nothing to do with the universe. But I'm saying that, and then it also sounds like really like ego, and that's something I'm working on as well. So
Yeah.
my podcast is extremely small, and I'm literally just like getting going with it, and I've started to notice, a little bit more, a few more likes on social media and stuff like that. And it's like, and you'll be very familiar with this, but then what happens when I stop posting the clips or the reels and I stop feeding, um, feeding more meat to the lions? There's obviously then your validation, like those likes and stuff starts to slow down. So then it makes you feel like, oh shit, I'm not loved. Am I just loved because of the content that I put out there? So yes, it's something I've been reflecting on recently, is like this ego side of it. And it's like, do I need the ego? Or, I've read The Ego is Enemy by Ryan Holiday twice, but I feel like I need to read it a
Yes.
third time. Interestingly
Big book.
enough, the second
Big
time I
book.
read it was straight after Naked Attraction. I was like, I need this. I need to just like, because I won the date, by the way. Sorry for
Yeah.
chattering on about myself. Um,
This is your show. Talk about what you want.
yeah. Do you know yeah, maybe that's something else I need to manage. I'm like constantly aware
I'm just glad
of.
someone wants to talk to me. So
Yeah,
crack
yeah,
on.
you're used to like doing that.
I'm enjoying it.
Well, do you know, someone said to me the other day that the one of my podcasts, and they said, I thought it was really good, and they said, oh, you're a good interviewer, but I actually kind of like the ones where you talk a bit more.
Where
And
you
I'm like,
talk.
fucking
Last
hell,
year.
don't tell me that.
No, but this is the thing. But people are listening to your show because you're hosting it. It was the biggest bit of feedback. The podcast nearly ended last year for this. Like everything that you've just said is the reason why it nearly
Wow.
ended. And a lot of people stopped listening because I was having the same conversation with people that I just, in all honesty, like I just could not be asked to talk to.
Right.
I was on like a music PR kind of like list of being told, oh, this person's releasing a song, you should talk to this person's releasing an album. I was like, well, it's great. Like, don't get me wrong, like I love music, I love, lyrics and finding out how like music comes together. But essentially, like I just wasn't having the conversations that I wasn't having.
Yeah.
Like I wasn't showing my journey, I wasn't sharing like what I'd been up to or the lessons that I've learned. And a lot of the feedback last year was like, well, we'll kind of stop listening because you weren't saying anything. So like that's not like an ego thing. It's just like, this is your show, this is your platform that you created because you needed it essentially. Everything else is just a byproduct of it. It's a difficult one because I'm like 4 years in now and I'm still having to remind myself like this wasn't for everyone else. This was for
Yes.
you. Like from day one, this is because you needed to talk, you needed to open up, you needed to get out your comfort zone, you needed to learn, you needed to grow. And I lost all of that. Whereas it's only recently now, like this past season, I guess, that I'm talking to the people that I want to talk about subjects that I want to talk about. And my numbers have almost doubled back to where it's like it was
Because you're being
supposed
true
to
to
be.
yourself.
Being true to myself, like I'm just sharing more of me. It's a weird one because when I was quite outgoing, like if I was around the right people, like my friends and stuff, like I was very comfortable, very open. but I wasn't about my mental health until it got to a point where I needed to talk about it. And then the platform got built, like the podcast was doing what it was doing. That's why I have a bit of an issue with it being called like a mental health podcast, because essentially like it's not really. We talk about mental health, but it's not a mental health podcast. We talk in general about so many different things. And because I kind of pigeonholed myself about talking about mental health, I lost this other side of me that you are allowed to laugh on a podcast, Taylor. Like, you are allowed to, like, you know, share these funny stories. You are allowed to do these things that make up you just as much as like this small, very small part of your life. So yeah, you've just gotta go for it. And again, it comes back to that inner voice, because deep down, like, I knew I always wanted to show that side of me, but it's like I felt like, well, people are listening in now because of these kind of conversations. But it's just like, well, I'm closing off a huge part of who I am. So yeah, it's that inner voice again.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that. It's yeah, you're always like, we're always walking like this line, this balance of trying to show up and be authentic, but not be like too egotistical. I think, you know, because also I could go through this whole conversation, if I'm not careful, I won't ask Taylor anything, and I'll just and then
No, but I think you're actually spiking like really good talking points, because now on the conversation of authenticity, especially with the generation that we're in at the moment, do you think anyone's actually taking the time to find out who they are? So everyone's talking about authenticity, whereas if you said to me, like, in my 20s, like, that was the authentic version of Taylor, it wasn't, because I was so deeply unhappy for a huge period of my 20s. So looking back, I was like, well, I wasn't being authentic because I wasn't the person who I wanted to be. I was almost doing it for everyone else. And so it is a big talking point, because I'm just like, well, authenticity, like, if you go to like the dictionary, is like showing up as yourself and being true to who you are. Whereas I would argue that a lot of people who are talking about being authentic aren't being authentic. And I'm saying that from personal experience. Like, past versions of the episodes, that even certain like moments on this podcast journey, or however you want to label it, I wasn't being authentic. Yet I was saying, like, I'm just being myself, I'm just being authentic. Like, well, you're not, because you're hiding a huge part of who you are. Like, you're almost scared to show that. So I've felt myself being quite hypocritical around this whole like authenticity thing. Whereas I feel like I'm like in a place now where this is who I am. I'm very comfortable and I'm confident with who I am. But it's a cracking conversation piece.
Yeah. So and how did that
Sorry, that was a rant.
how did that start? So tell me a little bit more about the podcast journey. So you said it was COVID. Where did you start, and then where did it meander off? Like, what happened there? You touched on like something to do with labels, was it?
Yes. So it started essentially because I nearly lost my mom to an operation that went horribly wrong. And in the process of kind of coming to terms with what was going on, I had to take over the family home, look after my younger sister. So all of this kind of stuff, like, it was too much for me. Like, I was carrying the weight of the world on my shoulders. And I got to a point where, like, I was just like, I can't do this anymore. Like, I had nowhere to turn to. The only two people I did have at the time was like my younger sister and like my best mate. And even they were like, we're really worried about you. Like, you're not yourself. So that's essentially what led me to like, right, okay, well, I need to start talking about it. Then as like the episodes started going out, a lot more people were kind of talking and like opening up to me, saying like, oh, I'm going through this has happened to me. And I was like, there is a whole world here that I didn't know existed. Like, people going through things that, like, essentially I needed to talk to them about, because I was slowly building this toolkit of coping mechanisms, or, you know, I guess conversation starters that I needed to hear about, because I can't meditate. Sometimes going for a walk for my mental health, it's not going to do it. Whereas things like journaling, Lego, not journaling Lego, that was two separate things there. But it was these kind of stuff that like I started to kind of like build myself. Then as the conversations started to get like a little bit more like in depth, I was like, I feel like a bit of a fraud because I'm not qualified to have any of these kind of conversations. But then it was like the outside like judgment and everything started creeping in. I'm like, I'm not a therapist. I'm not like qualified to have any of these conversations. And then I got approached by a doctor in New York to host and produce a podcast for them. So all of a sudden, this life that I had was coming almost to an end because I was flying off to New York to live this dream of starting
What type of doctor?
like a new podcast, almost a new life. So he was a psychiatrist. I need to be careful because I'm pretty sure there's some kind of like NDA or something that I've signed. So I'm not going to mention names or anything, but it was so toxic, like such a toxic environment. And I wasn't even in New York. I never even got, I mean, I got to Heathrow and got turned away because of the travel restrictions. And I think that was the start of the turning point for me to be like, well, actually, I'm kind of being told to live a certain way or do certain things. And I think it was like I don't actually want to do this. This is someone else's dream. So it almost kind of like I stepped away from the whole kind of like going over there thing, I stepped away from the team, the opportunity, and was just like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Like, sit down, like, what are you actually doing? Like, where do you want to go with this? And yeah, I don't know. I can't even remember the question now, but that was a bit of a rant.
No, that's awesome. Yeah, we were just talking about
I think it was quite a pivotal moment.
the transition of your podcast and the different sort of stages it's gone through.
But I think, to be fair, with that, it was that around that time then I was like, okay, well, who do I want to talk to? What do I want to talk about? But I was so conditioned because I think it gave me like a false sense of reality of like, well, this is making me popular. This is making me like feel good. Whereas deep down, like it wasn't really what I wanted to be doing. It wasn't like what I wanted to be talking to. I was just churning out this content constantly. And then to be fair, I think it probably continued for about 2 years. And then I was like, it's only really been the end of last year, again, when I went through like a real kind of like tough patch, that was like, this needs to change. Like, you're in control of this. What needs to change? And it was that going back to the drawing board of like, well, this started because you wanted to learn, you wanted to grow. Now, it had to evolve because I was having certain conversations with people that were kind of taking me back like to day one. Whereas I was like, well, I think that's when I started to realize like, well, the mental health side of things is actually just a small part of my journey so far. Like, yes, I still struggle, but it doesn't define who I am.
Yes.
Like, it doesn't, dictate to where I'm going next. And I know I'm very fortunate to be in a position that I can say that. But I've also put in a lot of hard work to get to that point. So I was just like, no, like the mental health side of things, like it kind of needs to be put to bed now. And I need to explore this whole new side of who I am because it saved my life, the podcast, but it's now given me a whole new one that if I was to kind of ignore it and shut down and just keep doing the same thing, we need to change. We need to grow. It's part of life. So I'm kind of excited where we're going, but it was the labels thing that was like, oh, it's a mental health podcast. I was like, but it's not, because I talk about so much more. Like, I'm a big music fan. Like, I'm a music nerd when it comes to like lyrics and like melodies and stuff like that. I mean, I have no musical talent whatsoever, but it's just always captured me. So I was just like, well, I want to talk to people about the songs that have soundtracked their journey so far. Like, I want to learn about, aliens. I want to learn about like sexuality, like religion, like what, you know, makes people tick. Because early doors, the podcast gave me all these tools from a mental health point of view. Now I'm at a stage where I have like business, I have, you know, all this new, I guess, aspects to me that I kind of ignored for a huge period of time. I was just like, well, I need to learn about it. I need to talk to people about it, because that's how we learn, by asking those questions. So yeah, it's a big transitional time at the moment, but it's nice because I feel like I've got that fire of like putting myself first again.
That's awesome.
Which I got lost for probably close to 2 years.
You're doing this full time, right?
To a certain degree. So the waffle isn't full time, but I'm very fortunate to be able to, on the back of the whole New York thing, I was like, well, why do I need to go to New York to be able to do this? Like, I can do this from anywhere in the world. Like, I developed this new skill and I throw myself into it. And then I was very fortunate to meet a team in my hometown who were like, we want to be involved with what you're doing. I loved working with them, and we were like, you know what, if we're going to do this, let's do it. So I now have kind of like my own production team, studio, and I produce shows for other people. I help develop concepts. So it's weird, but this is why, again, it's kind of like so important. Like, if you've got like a passion for something, or that gut is telling you like just to go for it, because I didn't know it was all going to happen, and I'm grateful, I guess.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Interesting that you said you're a big music fan. As am I. And
You have musical talent, though.
Unused musical talent. Yeah, I've mentioned this on the podcast before. Like, I have a bit of a strange relationship with music, because it kind of just never really happened for me. And I had all the talent. Without being big-headed. Like, I was given a gift. But it just didn't work out for me. My own fault through ego and stuff. So perhaps that's why I'm always a little bit afraid of leaning into that side of me too much. But
so is the ego stopping you from sharing the talent that you have?
They say there's nothing more egotistical than trying to get rid of your ego.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, let me ask you another question. When it comes to music, do you love it?
Yes, if I can get out of my own way.
Okay.
Yeah, like in terms of like the top, usually the moments when I feel pure joy is to do with music. Like, and not even necessarily performing music. There is some of that, but some of my favorite moments of just like, I have this one where I was playing pool with my team at my old business, and they were a really good team, and we were pretty close, and it was like a lock in, and I wasn't drinking, and I was just playing music, and I was playing like all the sort of tunes I was into, some metal stuff and sort of emo stuff, and I was just fully just like playing air guitar on the pool cue, sliding on my fucking knees, and that stands out. It's weird actually, because yeah, just pure joy in those moments. And I do miss that.
So why would you neglect yourself of pure joy?
Because it relates to a side of me. So, like, my music playing is linked to a side of me that was extremely into alcohol and drugs.
Okay.
So, yeah. So, and like, I don't drink now. Yeah. So I basically gave up drinking drugs like 3 years ago.
Yeah.
And along that time, I've had like some experiments in moderation and kind of like, which basically would last like a couple of days and go like, this ain't working. I enjoy this way too much, and I feel fucking miserable. And then
Yeah.
I'd stop again. So at present, it's like I've been going like well over a year with actually not touching anything.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you. But like, it's weird. Like, it doesn't really like. We talk a lot about what defines us and stuff, but it doesn't really define me anymore. Like, I guess it does in some aspects, but I think that's been, if anyone's listening and struggle with addiction, there are two ways you can go with it, and it's like lean into it, go to AA, really let it assume your being and the rest of it. And I totally, again, whatever gets you there. But for me, it was actually just kind of letting go of it and getting in and leaning into a lifestyle that had absolutely nothing to do with drinking. So that was, the podcast and my training. Actually, the gym that I go to has just been amazing. I do this thing called High Rocks, and that's become like a bit of a religion. And yeah, so for a long time, I didn't actually count like how long I'd not been drinking for, because I was like, I don't even want to give it that power over me. So yeah, see what you've done here. You've turned this into me monologuing and you being the therapist. Which
Because I've got a really snotty nose, so I'm trying to not sound really nasally. So the more talking you do, the better. Even though this is your show, but we've said it like almost like it repeat little like segments in this show about letting go of that past version of you. But at the same time, mate, you can't give up on something that makes you feel happy.
Yeah.
Like, I know, obviously, I get it from a point of view of, it almost reflects a certain lifestyle, and, it is difficult. I'm not going to sit here and be like, well, no, like, you can do it without that, because I'm fully aware that it comes with certain aspects of like culture and stuff like that. But you've been given a talent that some people would kill for, that makes you happy. So even if it's just doing it for yourself, like, it's those little things, mate, that I think really, it's a huge part of who you are. And I think if it does put a smile on your face, like, no one's saying like you have to get out on the stage and do like these like headline shows and stuff like that. If you are incredible, like, I'll be there. But it's those little things that sometimes that we do neglect that make up a huge like part of us. And I find it quite sad sometimes, and I'm only saying it from personal experience. I'm not saying I find you sad or anything like that. It's just because there's certain things that I used to shy away from or hide from, or say, or feel like I couldn't say, like, oh, I really enjoy this, or I'm actually good at something. Like, it took a bloody waffle and turning 30 for me to say, like, do you know what? I'm actually good at something. It makes me happy. And now I can't really imagine my life without it. So if music is that thing for you,
I
don't know. That sounds very preachy.
No, it's not. It's nice to hear, and again, there's this theme, isn't there, of like, be authentic to yourself and kind of I guess like get out of your own way and just roll with it. But also, I mean, the other side of it is, unfortunately, there's only so much time in the day, and actually, right now, I am the happiest I've ever been in my life, which is an incredible thing to say.
There we go.
And I've been single for 3 years. I've been living on my own for like 2 years. And yeah, it's great. I mean, not everything's not perfect, but I love my life as it is. Okay, yeah. If I was able to maybe do this full time, or free up my time a little bit so I could do some more music, maybe that could be something. I think I know it's there. Like, music is here, and right now I just kind of need to, like, I don't know. I just don't have the resources to explore that, because also, and this comes back to ego again, it's like I do struggle to motivate myself to play music if there isn't a big performance at the end of it, because I want
Okay.
I want validation and adoration from people. But of course, that's difficult, isn't it? Because that's not necessarily the joy part of it. The joy part is internal, not external. So where does the joy come in?
Yeah.
And I suppose maybe the joy comes in when it's a small bunch of people playing music in a room together or something like that. So perhaps I need to sort of lean into that.
Yeah, it sounded very like, you need to do this. Like, that's not what I was doing. I just felt like if you've
No, but you've seen a thread and you're prodding
it's that
it,
kind of voice, isn't
and that's
it?
yeah, it's appreciated. Yeah, no, that's awesome, man.
It's just because I'm jealous. Like, I wish I had an ounce of musical talent, and I don't.
Yeah, yeah.
Although I did make a song with
Did
Sean
you?
Paul. Yeah, I actually found it last night because I'm doing an event, and I actually found it. I've never done this
Okay.
before, but oh no, where is it? I'll play you a snippet of it through the microphone.
But I don't really care what people are saying. It's time to start waffling with Tay. I don't really watch what them want to do. It's time for the Waffle Show.
Taylor James.
Thunderball. Fuck with it, girl. With a bang, bang, bang.
That's so cool. How did that come about?
We even did like a little photo
Wow.
shoot. It's the opportunity, mate. I reached out, and then it got to like towards the end of the recording. I was just like, I've got this really funny idea. Like, I'm a huge Sean Paul fan. I was like, do you reckon we could do something? And he was just like, yeah. I was like, oh, okay. So yeah, we ended up kind of just having a little.
So did
back
you
and
have him on
forth.
the show?
Yeah.
How did that like come about? Did you just DM him? Like was there a connection?
I think it was an email, to be fair. But I'm a big believer in, like, if you don't ask, you don't get.
That's such a
Like, I used to be so scared of rejection. I think it's a universal thing, obviously. But when the whole podcast started, I thought it would just be like, I'll speak to like my friends and like family or like people around me. And then I recorded this one episode, and the advice that her name's Holly Matthews, she gave me was, if you don't ask, you don't get. And I was like, do you know what? Let's see what happens. And if you'd have told me back when I started that I'd have these people on the show whose music I genuinely like listen to, like, and love, yeah. But if you don't ask, you don't get.
That's so cool. And
they say no.
Yeah, and it's so true, and it's something that I'm trying to Like I have a little habit at the start of each day. So after I've done my meditation, check me out. After I've done my meditation, and my thing is that I need to send one podcast invitation, just one a day. And yeah, so it's Instagram. I might search for a hashtag. I might whatever. I just find a thread, and then I'll find sometimes now, and then I'll sit on the profile and I'll be like, no, this person doesn't want to speak to you, or this person won't be interesting, and I'm like, fucking just do it. Just send the invite.
Yeah.
They either won't reply or they might reply, and then you can decide afterwards. Like if you really don't want to put them on for some reason, you can. Yeah.
Have you ever had that? Have you ever like reached out to someone and been like almost regretted it?
No, I've had a full recording be abandoned. I don't know. Has that happened to you?
Oh yeah, I've had a fair few.
Yeah. I had my first one like a few weeks ago. And basically what happened was, again, it's all down to, it's my fault. I always think, if something doesn't happen, like you can't blame, okay, you can blame other people to a certain extent, but it's like I hadn't been clear enough from the start as to what they should expect. So when I sent this person the recording, she had sent it to like fucking film producers and stuff because she knew people in the industry, and sent me like a bulleted list of all the stuff that I should be doing. And like,
wait, hang on. What?
Yeah, like your intros, this, and having looked at your the previous podcast before that, it's not consistent or whatever. And also you started the show talking about AI, which had nothing to do with our conversation, the subject. And I'm like, you know this as much as anything. It's like you want to include that authenticity. So
yeah.
And she was like, she wanted to re-record it, and then I just had to like listen to my intuition and just go, actually, no, this isn't for you. Then, I really appreciate your feedback, and you've helped me learn. I need to communicate better. But yeah, this isn't a snazzy production. Right now, this is a hobby for me.
There's two things there, though, mate. There's feedback that like appreciated. However, I have an issue with unsolicited advice. That, with all due respect, I didn't ask.
Yeah,
It's this that. Don't get me wrong. I don't like conflict. I don't like anything like that. However, there's always an expert in something, and whilst I appreciate people having opinions and this, that, and the other, however, this isn't a production. This isn't like set up to be like this big, huge thing. This is like two people sat down, have a conversation about life in general, certain pain points, certain topics, this, that, and the other. So the fact that someone has come back and said this, and this, like you're a better man than me, because I think I would have responded with, like, as much as I appreciate your feedback, like, piss off.
Yeah.
I know, because it was, and it's like, I've had it for such a huge period of time when I first started, people telling me, like, I should be doing this, I should be doing that, or you should have this person on the show, you should do this. I'm just like, but if you wanted that conversation to happen, like, there is nothing stopping you from starting a podcast. Like, it's just, I don't know, like, it probably does sound quite egotistical, but like, this is mine.
Yeah, I think
like, I don't make you dinner then eat it. Do you know what I mean? It's like, that was a horrible analogy, but like, I don't know, just people need to kind of like stay in their lanes a little bit. Like, I don't know, stuff like that really gets on my tits.
Yeah, we're obviously in slightly different. Yeah, because you've been doing it so long, I guess you've built up that confidence to be just like, fuck off. So,
I mean, I wouldn't say like that's probably a little bit cocky of me
Yeah.
to say that.
yeah,
I wouldn't say piss
Sure.
off, but there has been conversations where I've almost been told what to say. I'm just like, I can't. I've been at that version. I find it almost quite triggering to be like told what I can and can't do now, and I'm like, what?
yeah,
I've got this far by believing in myself, and I can't have someone come in at this stage and be like, no, this is wrong. You should do this. I'm like, if it's a different way of thinking, like, don't get me wrong, I wouldn't shut it down straight away. I'd process it, almost like trial it, and if it works, even better. That's how you learn. That's how you grow. But at the same time, like, I'm not going to learn how to ride a bike from someone who cannot ride a bike.
yeah. It's like, do you listen to Chris Williamson at all?
No.
Yeah,
Should I?
yeah. He's the man for me. Like,
Okay.
that sounded a bit gay. Didn't mean it like that. No, he's like my hero in the podcasting world. He's got a podcast called Modern Wisdom. And he said this thing. Actually, I don't know if it's him or whether it was a guest on his show, but he basically said, when taking advice, or if someone's offering you advice, like, be careful. And it's basically kind of what you were saying. Do they have what you want? And if they don't take their advice.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So advice about podcasting from a podcaster, yeah. But advice about podcasting from one of your mates or whatever.
I think asking advice from your friends sometimes can be a real detrimental thing to do, because they will almost, everyone has that friend that will just kind of like cut through the shit and get straight to the point. But even then, there's that kind of layer of, are you telling me what I want to hear, or are you saying this for that kind of purpose? Like, it's a weird one, but
it's such a strange art form, isn't it? Because, if it was, I don't know, if it was a business, like, let's say you had a cafe, then you would want that feedback from your friend. And if you were a recording artist, I suppose you'd want some feedback, but again, you want to be true to yourself. But then with the podcast, it's just like, you kind of, you just do it, don't you? And it's like, I'll figure it out. And there's this whole thing about audience capture, which obviously tracks a lot with your sort of story. And it's like, I kind of like, I do want the feedback, but I also kind of don't care, because I'm just, is it enjoyable for me? Yes. Okay, I'll keep doing it. That's it. Interesting. I was going to talk to you about ice baths, but so I've done quite a lot of it over the last few years, and the side effect of that is you become like kind of like cold adapted. So you don't get cold like when most people do. So then when you're sharing an office with people, and it's like, it's fucking roasting in here, and people have got like jackets on, and then they're like in my t-shirt, and like, and it's just like your like thermodynamics are like just slightly different, and it's like, a little bit frustrating at times. But I heard you talking about ice baths on your 2023 roundup.
Yeah.
And it was so interesting to sort of track what happened, because you had a bit of a whinge about ice baths with your mate.
Yeah.
And then you even said, I got my back up a little bit, like, because you're talking about, and they'll just get them and they'll never use them and stuff. And I'm like, do you know what my ice bath is? It's a council bin that I fill up with water. So it's literally.
But I respect that more.
Yeah.
Because that's multi, like, purpose.
Yeah, like, I've done it for. Okay, there may be some status signaling, but it's not like, oh, look at me with my Lumia pod.
Yeah.
I'm like, anyway, I did it because like I wanted to. I actually started through like a bit of a charity thing and a grandparent dying. Blah, 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 blah. Anyways, but then later in that podcast, you said something about the universe showing you something, trying to remind you, and I'm like, he's not noticed it. Like the ice baths, like that's the universe,
Yeah.
That's, and because you said about, you had your struggles with mental health, and I'm like, because I've been the same, and I'm like, dude, you got to do it. Like, it's so good for if you're struggling with mental health. And then I did a little bit more research, and then I seen you a picture of you doing your ice bathing.
Do you know what? I'm so grateful that you're calling me out.
Like the first one to do it.
This is I respect this so much, but no, like you're right, and I bang on quite a lot about if it works for people, it works for people. But yeah, it was just always something that I just felt like it's because I didn't understand it, and then I tried it for the first time recently, and the rush afterwards, like I almost felt brand new. Like afterwards, like it gave me this new found energy that I wasn't expecting to have. And don't get me wrong, I haven't been doing it like I'm not in my garden at like 6 o'clock in the morning. I just feel like with that kind of stuff, it almost becomes a bit of like a personality trait.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. There's definitely like, you're signaling, and there's lots of like knobheads, myself included, that do lots of videos with them in the ice bath and stuff like that. But that's our like
so, like,
British.
I can't sit here and be like,
that's our like British like tendency to be cutting and go, oh, look at that knobhead.
So then, is that me not just doing the same thing as what like I'm calling other people out for? Because I'm just like, well, I'm almost judging people for doing that, and it's like, well, you low key know that is the right thing to do. You know that there's a lot of benefits to doing that. It's like going to the gym.
Yeah.
People are like, oh, the people who go to the gym, it's a personality.
Yeah.
Like, I don't need to see photo. Because deep down, I know that that's the thing that I should be doing because it's going to make me feel better.
Yeah.
So it's quite a toxic, like,
I think it's getting
mentality, to be fair.
It's getting the balance. Like when I first started doing it, I was like, right, I'm going to film myself getting in this bin for 3 minutes for 3 months every day without fail. And actually, in fairness, I did miss a few days and whatever. But long story short, I finished it. But then after that, I knew that I'd hacked that system, as in I need to use my need for validation and love to motivate me to get out of bed in the morning, because I was going through some depression as well, to get in the bin. And I was like, right, because sometimes in the life you can go, right, what's one thing I could do that would just change my life? And that's one of them. Like, sign up, do this thing, I'm going to do it for 3 months. Because at the end of that, I know I'll be a completely different person. And that's true. And like, even now, like, people like, you kind of like, you're like the bin guy, the ice bath guy, because I did that thing. And, I carried on doing it without the cameras on.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, sometimes I would use the camera to encourage me, if I was struggling, because I basically did my first full winter of doing it every single day without fail, head under first thing, snow, ice, whatever. But there were some days where I needed to put that fucking camera on my back gate with the fucking flash on because it's dark, and tap into that. But then there was other days where I go, no, you're not doing that today. This is for you. And you're not having that, but it's mixing it up. Do you know what I mean? Doing it for you. But then sometimes if you need to do that, if that's what it takes for you to go to the gym, that you put it on your Instagram story, crack on.
It's accountability as well, isn't it? Like it is quite judgmental. But for there's certain aspects of stuff like that, and social media is such a toxic place for this kind of stuff. Like it's, you know, like when people who will help a homeless person on the street, but they'll film themselves doing it.
Yeah.
It's that kind of stuff that I feel like, especially in the mental health space sometimes, like I find like trickles in a little bit. I'm all for people sharing their stories and having the conversations because it's really important, like showing those, you know, the vulnerabilities and the dark points. But there's certain stuff of it, like I don't know, and it probably is really judgmental for me to say, but sometimes I don't quite buy it.
Yeah.
And there are days that you know, I do still really struggle, but the thought of like sitting in front of a camera sometimes, like I have to really, really push myself sometimes. Like there's been certain episodes that I'm almost like, I look back on, I'm like almost like dead behind the eyes because I'm just on autopilot. And some of the stuff that I see out there, like on social media, sometimes I'm like, oh, I don't know.
Yeah.
But then I'm not in a position to say that kind of stuff, to be fair. So I actually need to kind of like check myself because there's people probably looking at me thinking exactly the same. So
I think it's being able to, again, it's like trusting your gut, and like if something feels a bit off, then just being aware of that, and also like not judging people. Do you know, actually, I'll totally open up about this as well. Why not? I was looking through my notes of my questions for you, and while I was taking the notes, I was like, am I judging Taylor? I've not even met him. Am I judging him? And it was like really hypercritical of myself. Like I was like, I don't know. It was a question. So then I just wrote a note, and I thought I'm going to put it in all my other guest notes. Am I judging this person before I've even spoken to them? While I'm preparing my questions.
But I also think that's a very human thing to do.
100%. Yeah, there's no, like I'm not being critical of myself. Like it is normal, but it was like, oh, how much better could this conversation be if I have no judgment coming into it? And it was just like a little like reframe just to kind of like step back a bit, because that's what you do, isn't it? When you're doing your research and you're looking into this person's history or whatever, or this person, and you start to build up this like image of them, and I'm like, but maybe it's wrong. So it's like having that beginner's mind to sort of like.
But I also think that makes you very good at what you do, because I've done a lot of these
ego,
kind of like things. I do a lot of like, you know, like interviews and stuff, whether it's for the Waffle or like for the like shows and stuff now. Whereas, and I'm not just saying this has been the one where I felt like we've had a few messages on Instagram, but like I generally feel like I'm sat down with a friend who is calling me out on stuff. It is questioning me. Like it hasn't been the generic kind of conversation of like, well, what happened to your mom? Who's been your favorite guests on the podcast? It has been a very authentic conversation about stuff that I don't normally get to talk about. So genuinely, I'm loving this.
Oh, that's so nice. So, honestly, that's really nice of you to say. You almost brought a tear to my eye there, because like this is a very new project. Well, I say very new. I've been doing it over a year, but I've only really just started publishing stuff. So to sit across, albeit digitally, from someone who's been doing it for 4 years and is doing the thing, that means a lot. So I appreciate that. I do feel like this is something I should be doing. You know, there's like, what did they say? Like a full body yes.
Yeah.
Hasn't always been the case though. Like some of my earlier episodes, I was kind of like, I would come off the call and I feel like, whoa, like that was cool, but I feel fucking frazzled. Like I feel a bit anxious. I feel like angry. I have this weird like not angry, but like irritation. Like if I spend too much time on a screen or whatever, and it, so I really had to be like, hold on, like take it back. What's going on here? and there's actually one of my best friends, Dave. He's the guy that will call me out and shit all the time, and he was like, "You don't look relaxed," and like I'm all about like standing desk, so I have a standing desk. I'm all about posture and functional fitness, yeah. And I'm like, "Welcome to the podcast." Obviously, it wasn't like that, but like I was just a bit rigid, and I wasn't enjoying it. So I was like, okay. And the same thing with ones that I've done in person and recorded on set, and it's like it's been amazing, but there's too much stress put on me. Yeah. So I was like, right, how can I make this as easy as possible? Right, let's go back to digital only. Obviously the connection it's not the same as in real life, is it? But I think if you can just relax into it and just think of it like a phone call, because there's something about like, if you think that it's going to be the same looking at a person as in real life, that's not the case. But if you reframe it as in, this is a phone call and you're able to see that person, then it's a really beautiful thing.
But mine was built digitally, like during the pandemic. This has only been since having the studio. The only ones, I think probably 10 face-to-face interviews that I've done in total. Because I think if you're in your environment, I'm in mine, I feel comfortable instantly because I'm not, in somewhere where I feel like it might take me a while to settle in, or I feel like, well, I don't really belong here. I have it quite often when people come into the studio and they'll almost freak because it's just like the cameras will go on, the lights will go on. And it's like, this isn't like, it's almost like alien to a lot of people. And I think once you or your guest is comfortable, the conversation is just going to be so much better because you're in an environment that you feel, well, safe.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Hey, I wonder where, like, in 2030, 19th of April in 2030, in 6 years' time, let's put that down as a marker. I wonder how we will look back on this technology.
Yeah.
Like, wonder what we'll be doing. Like, whether...
Do you reckon it'll be like holograms?
I think so. I think, like the metaverse, all that shit. Like, there's obviously... Yeah, it'll be something like that, won't it? Surely. So that'll be really interesting. And if that's we'll have to do one in exactly 6 years' time. Stick it in your calendar. Yeah. And then we'll look back and go, like, what's the difference in technology in 6 years? Who knows? We might not be fucking here, though. So do you think podcasting is saturated?
I think by celebrities, yes. Or people with a huge platform. Completely saturated. However, I don't think it is from an independent point of view, because I think there is a lot of people that have such a talent for talking or bringing out certain aspects in people that have a story to tell that deserve to tell it on these platforms. So it's a weird one. Yes, I do, because the fact that, like, I mean, I love Jamie Lang, but the fact that he has like 3-4 podcasts, I'm like, I don't have time to listen to 4 versions of Jamie Lang talk about different things. 9 times out of 10 with the same celebrity. However, conversations like this, like, I'm going to get so much value out of. So yeah, it's a mixed one. It's a yes and a no.
Yeah, it's something I'm trying to figure out. I don't suppose it really matters, but yeah, depending on who you ask, it's like, oh, podcasting's full, but then other people will be like, well, actually, podcasting is there's more podcasting. There's more podcast closing because of you had this big boom in the pandemic. So in a weird way, because I'm coming at it like after the pandemic, like I could like cross over. But I think there's so much potential. I think intuitively that's kind of my thoughts. Like, you know, if you think about who listens to podcasts now, it's basically only like the main demographic is our demographic, isn't it? Like probably like what, like 28 to 38, like millennials probably. And yeah, so you talk to some people like that are a little bit older and they have no idea what a podcast is. Or
no, there's certain family members that don't have a clue what I do.
Really?
But from someone who fell in love with something and has now built a business on the back of that, like I think the demand for people to create podcasts is still there. And I feel like the demand for podcasts, I don't think people are making them enough for people to consume. Like the days are gone of sitting in front of the TV. You know, we're all watching or consuming content on our phones, or, you know, at a pace that suits us. Everyone's leaning more towards like streaming sites and stuff like that. Whereas podcasts have this like really powerful way of just taking you away from everything and putting you in someone else's world for like 30, 40, but however long it's going, and makes you feel part of something in a way that I don't think music, television or radio can kind of do. Don't get me wrong, I'm a huge music fan, but I don't think I've ever felt listening to an album the same way I have listened to a conversation with two people or like who I respect. And it's the same as like, I can't watch TV, I can't watch a video if I'm climbing a mountain or if I'm in the gym. There's just something so beautiful and intimate about podcasts that I think they're going to be here for a very, very long time. And yes, you can say it's like a saturated market, but like, I mean, Taylor Swift released an album today of like 30 songs. So in the music industry, you're like, does anyone really have, I mean, obviously this is just an example. I don't want to have any kind of beef with like her fan base or anything, but I'm just like, that to me is oversaturated. So you could almost say it with every sector. You know, how many songs are being uploaded to Spotify every day? How many films are being released that we might not actually ever get to see? So I don't think it's any different. Everyone's got watch lists on Netflix that we're never going to watch because from a time point of view, but there's obviously a market there for it, that people will get round to it when they get round to it. And podcasts are exactly the same.
Yeah. Yeah. And I caught between two thoughts there, making a slightly funny joke, but I was going to say, the watch list on Netflix is just to get rid of the stuff that you're not ever going to watch. That looks awesome. Exactly. Watch list. Never watch it.
Exactly. Yeah. Never watch it.
Because the stuff that you actually want to watch is you just watch it.
Or you forget it's there.
Yeah, exactly. It's on the list now. So you might come back to it in like 3 years' time. Who knows? Yeah. But I think you're right, man. And yeah, it's been like, podcasting is the perfect antidote to the loneliness epidemic. It totally agree more. It makes sense, and it's really helped for me. You know, being a consumer of, you know, podcasts, because we spend so much time on our own now, and you know, I think sorry, my fucking cognition is just totally switched off in the last like 2 minutes.
No, but I couldn't agree more.
Edit this out.
They make you feel they make you feel part of something. They really put you in a world, and music used to do it for me. Musicians and lyrics, and they used to be able to tell a story, or they used to be able to say things that I couldn't say. Podcasts for me not only from a personal point of view, from a professional point of view, have taught me lessons that I don't think I would have learned by conversations with the pub with my mates or with my family members. Like, that it gives me this almost freedom to learn at a pace that suits me with people that I end up trusting. There's some podcasts that I've listened to that the people who host them, like, have genuinely then become my friends. Like, it's just opened up this whole new world. Like, it's given me access to a life that I didn't think that I could ever access. Like, just from a personal point of view, the fact that, you know, Sophie Alex Bextor, for like, perfect example, like, I've listened to her music growing up. Like, then I was like, do you know what? Reach out to her, see if she wants to come on the show. She said yes. I was like, right, okay, this is mental. And then watching what's happened on the back of that with her, with all the, like, the resurgence of Murder on the Dance Floor and, like, Saltburn, and I'm just like, I would have shied away from all of that, thinking I could never do that. Like, that's a dream. Podcasts for me have made that dream a reality. And I know that sounds so cheesy, but it's nothing like game changing. It's nothing like overcomplicated. It is two people sat down having a conversation.
Yeah.
That's all it is. It doesn't have to be overcomplicated. And I think in this generation that we're in, where everyone is so, like that lady, for example, like, she was almost listening to react to then send all that feedback to you. No one's really listening anymore to listen. Podcasts make people listen to the conversations. They make people, like, consume things that they want to consume. It's at their pace. It's at their leisure. And yeah, I'd recommend it to anyone. Like, it's taught me how to be a man. It's taught me who I was meant to be. It's connected with me to some of the most incredible people that I never would have connected to, or felt like, oh, I can't connect to those people because who am I to sit there? Like, I don't know. I would recommend it to anyone. I could sit and talk about this stuff all day, because the impact that it has had on my life is, I don't think I've even got the word that could describe, like, the impact it has had on my life. So I'd recommend it to anyone.
Yeah, that's so special. I love that. You've name dropped a few people in this conversation.
I know, I hate that. I'm
No,
so
I love
sorry.
it.
Actually, my toes did like this.
No, I love it. Fuck
when
yeah.
I do that kind of...
This is what we do. Like, it's fine. Do you know what I mean? Like, this.
But I think it's the point of it, though, isn't it? It's like it's the discrediting the hard work that goes into it, and it's like the shying away from a talent. I think it's because I've spent such a huge period of time shrinking myself into places that I don't belong in, or forcing myself to sit at tables that I don't belong at. And now I'm like, well, I should be incredibly proud of what I've achieved. Yeah. And I hope my mum listens to this one, because she gives me such a hard time for not almost giving myself a pat on the back. Like, recently she said to me, she was like, stop looking for validation in people that don't care about you. And I'm like, where is this kind of knowledge coming from? But it's true. Like, we should be able to feel comfortable, not from a cocky point of view, but if me saying that makes other people feel uncomfortable, I'm sorry, but that's on you. That's not on me, because I'm incredibly proud of what I've been able to achieve from this.
And so, is
this making me sound like a dick?
No, not at all.
I feel like I'm quite fired up now.
Good. Yeah, you should be proud. Not that you need my validation, but yeah, fuck yeah. I mean, you had.
But I also want other people to feel like they can do it as well. Like, I'm not from that world of, like, music, TV. I worked in IT before I started the podcast. I'm just a normal lad who started something in his bedroom that this has happened for. Like, I haven't done anything different at all, other than talk utter shite. So it's like, just whatever it is, just start it, because the pandemic taught us that we're only here for like a limited period of time, and some of that time can get taken away from us. So like, why would we like just stop waiting and just start doing?
Yeah, I've got a solo podcast that I want to do. I love death, me. I have a tattoo in Spanish which says muerte, which is death. And I think it's just a really good way to harness your focus. And I've got a chart downstairs. I don't know if you've seen these online, and it's Jason's life in weeks. Okay. So it's basically, it's like a thing with a lot of squares, and all the little tiny squares reflect a week, and it's on like a picture frame, and it's representative of the equivalent of 80 years, which is the average time thing. People live till 80 years if I'm lucky. And when you order it, you're given your date of birth, and it comes pre-filled in with the squares filled in with a little black dot. And then as you put it on your wall, every week I've got to put a little dot. And sometimes it can become a little bit passive. Oh, fucking hell, yeah, I need to fill it in. Forgot this week. But I do try and make it a bit of a ritual on a Sunday. And I'll just look at it, fill the dot in, and I go, you are going to die. Did you do everything? Like, when you look back on this week, did you do it through the lens of like, you only live once? Are you doing what you're meant to be doing? Or are you wasting time? So I can't remember what we were talking about before I brought up death. Oh,
what fascinates you about death? Has that always been a thing?
I used to be very afraid of it. Okay, Jason monologue incoming. So when I was like 14, 15 or something, it was the first time in my life that I came like aware of death. I had a few people around me pass away. Certainly, like there was like people in my year at school, people in the year above me. Because we always hear about, we'd always have family members die and stuff, and not that was easy, but like, great grandparents and stuff when you were growing up, it was kind of, but then when like a kid would die, like, it was just kind of like, it was very, I don't know if the word is formative, but it just got me like, whoa, hold on a minute. I think maybe we all go through that at some point. And it just coincided with huge issues with anxiety. And I used to have awful panic attacks, thinking that I was going to die, and that plagued me right throughout my teens. And it was just awful. Like, I remember just like going to lock myself in the toilets at like the places that I worked, and just like thinking that I'm dying, and it's awful feeling. And when this came to me when I'd been traveling. I was very lucky enough to go traveling for 11 months when I was 26. And I was in Mexico. It was like my last country that I ended up going to. And I'd been reading The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck by Mark Manson. And I'd been reading that, and right at the end of his book, like, it talks about kind of like death and stuff. And I got this huge just moment. I'm sat on this beach reading this book, and the sun's going down, sorry. And I just got this realization. I'm like, it's all been about death. This is why I've been so afraid. This is why I've been so anxious. It's all death. And what I realized is not only is death inevitable, but it is necessary for us to live a meaningful life. And like, I remember just like, I got all teary, and then I was like all grateful, and like this, like I was in this beautiful place. And it was one of those moments in your life, which is just like a hallelujah moment, like, which I will always remember. And it was just like, it was just like something had been expelled from me. And I realized, like, you know, why am I so afraid? Like, who gives a shit? Like, you're going to die. And so better start like showing up like that's the case. So I that night I was like, right, I'm going to go get a tattoo. It was my first tattoo. And I went and being in Mexico, you know, the Day of the Dead, the Dia de los Muertos, like they're all about death over there and stuff. It was just like everything seemed to connect.
It's a celebration, isn't it?
Yeah.
They celebrate.
Yeah, they have like a totally different way of looking at things that we could learn from. And so I went and got this tattoo, and because I always wanted to be reminded of that moment. And it was funny that actually that spurred me on to do my first ever like YouTube channel, which was me writing songs with the camera rolling. So it was totally raw, and I took something, again, there's this theme, I took something that I was terrified of and I thought I was shit at, which is songwriting. And I was like, I'm just going to set a camera roll in, and I'm going to just literally just, right, okay, let's start. Okay, and I documented it. And and I think it's still available somewhere. I might link it. But you know, I only did like 5 episodes, and then I got pulled in a different direction. Someone offered me an opportunity to go into business with them, and shiny object syndrome. And it was, you know, I don't think I'd have ever said no, because it was a huge opportunity. But interesting how your life changes, and who knows, maybe I would have given up the YouTube channel anyways. But
it's those kind of moments, isn't it, that make you realize just how powerful being alive is.
Yeah.
But it's like, okay, this is why you kind of, you keep going. Like, you can't fear something that you can't control. I mean, it's very easy said than done, but it fascinates me, the whole death thing. Like, because I've seen the most incredible, remarkable woman being so close to it. And there's been times when I've planned my mum's funeral like 4 or 5 times a year, with how like much her health kind of like changes and dips. But essentially we can't control it. So we can either fear it, or I don't really know what I'm trying to say. I was trying to Google it, because I'm sure there's like a Drake song or something that's a very kind of like powerful lyric about like living and like making sure that you're living. But you can't fear it. You can't. Like, it's easier said than done. Like, of course it is, but yeah, it's out of our control, and you don't want to get to a certain stage where you're on your deathbed, or you're in those kind of like final moments wishing that you did something.
100%.
Like, that's why people talk about regrets as if they're like a bad thing. Oh, I regret doing that. Good.
Yeah.
Because you'd rather regret something that you have done than what you haven't done.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I think reflecting on your own death is something that you should do, and it's a really good thing to snap you out of, and, you know, keep you motivated for what it is that you want to do. Like, if anyone's listening to this now, you are going to die. No. You are going to die. Really. Yeah.
Say that again.
You
just with like a deeper voice.
Going to die. My name's Johnny Cash. I do a good Johnny Cash, actually.
I love that. Big fan.
But yeah, it can really wake you up, and don't be afraid of it. And also, if you feel like you're going to have a panic attack, if you're someone who feels like you're going to have a panic attack, good. Lean into it. Panic more. Go on. Keep panicking. Guess what? You're not okay, weirdly enough, you're not going to die at that moment. But it's like being able to realize that if you can just ride those things out, you can end up so much more powerful. I'm sorry, I'm going to say something else about cold water. So, I went to sauna last night, and I like to do the contrast therapy. Have you done that?
Yes. Only walking through cold water, then into hot water.
Right, okay.
I've only done it from
okay, right. But have you gone back? Have you tried going back and forth between sauna and then cold? And okay, so word of be careful, because it can you can pass out doing it. You've got to be really careful, and it just makes you feel great. So you go from sauna, and then you go into the cold, and then you come back in, and there's this changing of the way that your blood pressure is working, and the vascular the vascularity is kind of your vascular system is contracting and then opening, and there's something. But if you overdo it a little bit, it's fucking scary. But I try and induce this now and again as a bit of a challenge. So I did it yesterday. And what I'll do is I'll stay in the cold shower in between the sauna as long as I can till I feel like I'm getting brain freeze. And then I'll try and stay a little bit longer. And I always say that if I can induce a panic attack, that's where the magic is. So all of a sudden, you'll just become really fucking present, and so present that it's a bit psychedelic, or it's a bit like you're on a bit of a para, and So then I get into the sauna, and I'm sat there, and I'm chatting away to some guy, because I'm surprise, I'm always dead chatty. He wasn't even talking to me. I was like, you got sore shoulders? He was like, yeah. And I was like, oh yeah, you want to do this? You want to I can't help myself. I'm always fucking trying to fix people. And you could tell he's just fuck off, mate. And I'm just dead chatty. And I'm sat there, and then all of a sudden, I'm just oh. And I'm the sauna, the colour is normally it just started going really yellow. I was like, is it always this yellow? And then it looked like it was getting longer. And I'm like, oh fuck. And it's here comes the panic attack. And I'm sat there, and I was just okay, just close your eyes, just lean into it. And it's but there's something beautiful about being able to get through that and just be and just surrender. And because your mind wants to go, you're going to die, you've overdone it. No. Last time was fine, but this time you've really overdone it. You're about to die. You're about to pass out because you've overdone it or whatever. And then I have to go, no. Shh. It's okay. And then I sit there and I go, surrender. Come on, fucking what's the worst that can happen? Hit me.
Is that, there's a saying, isn't there? You have to go through it to grow through it. And it is people can surrender at the first time they went, whether it's a failure, whether it's that, falling at the first hurdle, and to never try again. But it's the same with letting out your emotion. You can't control the fact that you want to cry, so you might as well just let yourself cry. Yeah. I know it's not as severe as obviously the whole dying thing, but it's why are we stopping ourselves from crying? If you need to cry, cry. It's a very normal, natural thing to cry. So it might be quite a naive thing of looking at it, but
no, I think
it's, you have to go through it.
Everything has to come up. Let things come to the surface and surrender. I think there's so much in that.
I didn't realise the time. I've got someone in the studio.
Yeah, that's okay.
I've just clocked it out
Yeah,
of the corner of my eye.
No, mate, it's no, this has been great. I really appreciate it. So, before we wrap things up, where should people go if they want to follow your stuff?
To oh my god, my mind's just gone
The
blank.
show notes.
The show notes. Yeah, the show notes. Waffle Shop Podcast is anywhere that podcasts are available. Instagram with the same name. But yeah, I think that's pretty much where you can find me. I'm not giving my address out on these kind of things anymore because I start getting weird shit. Like Moonpig cards with my face on with no words inside. So Instagram's fine.
Awesome. And just before you shoot off, what can we expect from you in the next 2 years?
I really want to do like a festival. I really want like a podcast festival with like-minded people doing live versions of their podcasts, because there's something about being a part of the conversation with your headphones in, which is beautiful, but there's something even better about being a part of that conversation whilst everyone's in the same room. So that is what I'm working on at the moment.
Very interesting.
So
keep me
an eye
posted,
out.
man.
And an ear.
Yeah. All right, Taylor, it's been an absolute pleasure. I appreciate you spending this time, and yeah, I have a feeling that we'll be in touch again.
Oh,
Yeah.
obviously.
Okay.
You know what? I'll be watching this.
Oh dear. Yeah. I don't know if I'll link that one in, but yeah.
It's been a pleasure.
Have a good day.
It's all
Yeah.
in the show notes.
Take care, mate. Bye.
See you soon.